Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good wherever you are, and Happy New Year. I'm your host, That Lit Astro Chick, the channel where we discuss the natal charts of writers, artists, and anyone else that I find interesting. So, one of my New Year's resolutions is to start posting more on this channel because I feel like I've been getting out of practice when it comes to doing natal charts, and I wanted to have a space to practice them comfortably. And I was looking on the blogs and what was trending last month. I'm pretty sure it's something different this month. But the actress and singer, Halle Bailey, now she's got a new man, which is the Nigerian superstar Burna Boy, I think is how you say his name. And because I've seen tarot readings about it, I'm pretty sure that there are natal chart readings on it. But since we're kind of in the last part of having Libra on the South Node to dedicate to that, I wanted to do more Synastry readings just to get more of a practice in them, because I wanted to, have more practice, and it's just a little bit of ways that I can kill some time that I have really quickly. So without further ado, this is going to be a Synastry reading based on Halle and Burna Boy. I don't know very much about either one of them. I just pulled up what their chart information is that I have. So from what I understand, Halle Bailey was born on March 27th, 2000 in Atlanta, Georgia. And Burna Boy was born in Port Harcourt, Rivers, Nigeria on July 2nd, 1991. So there's a little bit of an age gap. So first I'm going to take a look at Halle's planets to just talk about what I notice is a little bit different about them. So the first thing that I notice about Halle's chart is the fact that her Mars, which is at the 3rd degree of Taurus, squares her Neptune, which is at the 6th degree of Aquarius. And the reason why I bring that up is because, typically speaking, in a woman's chart, your planetary aspects can speak to some of the experiences that you might have with men, as well as with your early life conditions. And it can talk about the type of people that we can bring into our lives. So Mars and Taurus, Mars is actually fallen when it's in Taurus. Fallen or detriment? Either way, it's not a sign for Mars to be in, but it speaks to someone who really does care a lot about their name, about preserving their reputation, as well as the value that they have that's perceived in the outside world. This can tend to talk about people who can be very possessive over others, especially when it comes to the choices and the partners that they have. These are people where they like to have a partner that is going to be quite regular. When it comes to intimate matters, they might be a little bit more vanilla than the other signs, but they do have a very long staying power. Now, Neptune in the natal charts, it speaks to our insecurities. It speaks to our desires, Neptune, it functions like Venus basically on crack. So it can also talk about what could humiliate us, as well as what are some things that could be our downfall. And I believe I said earlier, our Achilles heel. Now, because her Mars and her Neptune square each other, this could talk about an aspect in Halle's chart to where she might attract men who are not 100% honest about who they are claiming to be. And I think that this is really interesting, especially when I think about what happened with her and her ex. I'm also wondering with this aspect, if this could speak to men that get involved in your life where they could bring forth a really big scandal. I cannot remember the actress's name. I'll probably add it somewhere in the comment section. But there was an actress who got scammed by a scammer out of like $70,000, and she too had Mars squared Neptune in her chart. This tends to be a really hard aspect for a woman to have in her chart, because it could bring forth men where they picture, but that's really not who they are. So for the Mars square Neptune, I could definitely see this playing out as a man who might present himself as being somewhat of a stand-up guy, and then it turns out that he might actually just be more for everybody in terms of the types of people that he wants to be around. I could also see this as being put on blast on like some sort of a scandal. So I remember like when Halle was going on her tour for The Little Mermaid, DDG's ex, who I believe was Sophie Rose, had posted some text messages between her and DDG that were basically showing that he was insinuating still wanting her back. He still wanted to get back together with her. And I remembered initially seeing those text messages and I thought, okay, maybe I just might be bitter because I'm kind of old. But there is a really big part of me that feels like once you get to a point in your life to where you start to take your professional life seriously and your image seriously, you want to be mindful to stay away from people that could even give you the appearance of something looking very off. And I wish that Halle at that time had just left DDG because it was really embarrassing. I mean, here she is, first Black live action Disney star, amazing voice, and this guy that she has attached herself to has somebody else who has put her in a really bad position. Like I said, Mars square Neptune can be very scandalous. It could have a habit of attracting men who are scammers. This also could be people who will put her on blast and also challenge the notion of what her value and her name is. And I say that because her Neptune is in Aquarius. And Neptune, I believe, is in its fall when it's in Aquarius. But this could refer to having something secretive being put on blast on the internet, which was what Sophie Rose did by putting those text messages on the internet. And of course, there are people that could say, well, maybe Sophie was just jealous because Halle was a bigger star. And that could be a possibility. However, I still want to say that the timing of it was definitely something that was meant to tarnish Halle's name, tarnish her as being like a cookie cutter, like good girl image, which would be that Mars and Taurus. And unfortunately, she did not get to milk that all out. And I guess what I'm afraid of when I look at this aspect is that this could be another man coming into her life to where he might be performing something, pretending to be a certain type of person for her, but that might not necessarily be who he is. And this is something that she puts a lot of work into. And I say it like that because she also has her Mars and her Jupiter are conjunct. So she puts a lot of work into her name as well as into her voice because we all know that she's a singer. And she also has a very beautiful voice, mentioned by that Mercury in Pisces. And this is something that she will do a lot of work to obtain, which is having a good name as far as like the public eye and investing in her value and investing in her possessions and her things. But it does kind of seem like when I look at this conjunction in her chart that perhaps there are things that she can't see, or there are going to be parts of herself that are going to be exposed to a lot of people, and it's going to be constant. And it's something that I do worry about when I think about her career, is that it may not necessarily play out in the ways in which she would hope. And I'm also looking at the fact that her North Node is in Leo, and I'm a Leo sun, But to have so wherever the North Node is, if you have any planets that are squaring it, that's going to be where a lot of internal work is going to be as far as to go about for how to achieve that status. So her Mars definitely squares her North Node. So this is less going to be in this lifetime. It's not so much going to be about being in the class of the have-nots or working towards collectivism for the individual, but it's going to be more about learning how to feel, learning how to express herself, as well as having more of a development in romantic love, especially when it comes to children. I believe that she has a son with DDG. So that Mars placement, so the fact that her Mars and her Neptune, the orb is kind of wide for Neptune, but it does still officially count as squaring off with that North Node. that to me says that she's going to have a very troubled love life. I'm hoping it's something that eventually she can really get a hold of herself. Now on to Burna Boy's chart. I'll just talk about his very quickly. Now, what's interesting is that Halle is a Leo North node, and Burna Boy has a Leo stellium. So he has his Venus, Mars, and Jupiter, and those are all conjunct in Leo. So what's interesting to me when I look at this, especially when I see the Venus-Mars conjunction in Leo, this is kind of giving me like someone who could be very flamboyant. I've seen a few pictures. Like I said, I don't know who he is. Somebody where they tend to make selections based off of the way that they feel. So an interesting part about Venus as a planet is that it shows how we earn our income, our self-esteem. When it comes to our close friends or with people that like we might get crushes on, or people that we might want to partner with, who are those people? And because Burna Boy has his Mars in Leo, his Venus and his Mars are in Leo. That to me says that he's somebody who really looks for that it factor. He cares a lot about the way that a woman looks, because Venus in Leo, it tends to be very superficial. He is looking for a woman to stroke his ego. I'd also say because of that stellium that's going to be in Venus, Mars, and Jupiter, he also could be someone who could be very much into his ego. I don't see him as being like a one-woman man ever, because he needs to have a lot of options when it comes to how he is. I know that when it comes to Leo placements is that they tend to be seen as being very egotistical, very me. And it's also interesting because he has he square Pluto. So this is interesting because I had done a natal chart on Frankie Manning a couple of months back, and I talked about how I had read not Frankie's chart, but somebody else's chart who also had Venus square Pluto. That's a very hard square to have. And in this aspect, when I think about Halle, I could see him as being quite generous, but his generosity, it comes at a price. So the other, I guess, some of the more positive aspects of having all these Leo placements is that he could be very charismatic, very romantic, very much about like the feels and the heart space, because Leo in astrology, it deals with all matters that are related to the heart. This also could be someone who has a lot of like romantic gestures, especially when it comes to like maybe going on trips or having some type of opulence, or if there is like her favorite movie or her favorite food or like her favorite social situations, because Leo is a very social sign. He is somebody who is willing to provide her with those things. However, what I do notice with that Venus square Pluto combination in his chart is that while he might be someone who could be very generous, he's also someone who's going to be willing to take it away if he feels like he doesn't get what he wants. And that is actually a concern that I have for Halle. Venus square Pluto in a chart, it can also produce someone who could be have a lot of up and downs when it comes to their relationships, especially when they're young. And when it comes to matters of astrology, anybody that's under the age of 40, so this would still count Burna Boy, is considered to be very young. So that kind of gives me some concern. Also, that Mars square Pluto, and his Pluto is at the 17th degree of Scorpio. This also could speak to somebody where like they might go after younger women, but they're going after younger women for the purposes of control. And because he does have that square in his chart, he actually might be someone who could get away with it for a while. I know of someone else that also was a Mars square Pluto person, was the Black activist. Oh my God, I'm blanking on his name, but he was arrested. Brother Polite. Sorry. He was arrested a couple of years ago because it turned out that he had inappropriate relationships with one of his lover's daughters. And he had a thing for kids, and I believe he was a Leo sun. But he also had a Mars square Pluto in his chart. And typically speaking, when people have this in their chart, they can have some very sick fantasies. I mean, very sick fantasies. And because his Mars is in Leo and his Pluto is in Scorpio, this could also point to someone who could probably have fantasies concerning children, or with taking advantage of people where there's like an age gap, as I said before, in their relationship. And he also could be someone who might have questionable morals and ethics. I also say that because he does have his Pluto and Jupiter. Those are also squaring as well. So I think that when it comes to matters of the heart or matters that might move him, he might be someone who's going to be willing to jeopardize those things if it means that he gets what he wants. And whoever gets hurt, sadly, the way he might see it could be like, that's on them. He's not going to be someone who really cares that much about restrictions or about possessions. And I say that because he does have his Saturn in Aquarius. And I think the orb is too wide for that one. I was going to say it doesn't quite square Pluto. But I will say, though, is that because the signs, so for example, his Jupiter is in opposition to his Saturn, this is somebody who might actually require a lot of freedom, especially when it comes to the relationships that they have with their friends, or that a lot of trial and tribulations are going to go through the people that they know. So let's, with that out of the way, let me go ahead and talk a little bit more about some of the aspects in their charts. I'm going to start with some of the more positive ones. All right, so they do have quite a few trines going on. The first one that I noticed is that Halle's Venus trines with Burna Boy's Pluto, and Halle's Venus is exalted in Pisces. So that's like one of the best Venuses to have. This could mean that they could probably have like a very strong magnetic pole. These could be people who have probably a lot of very strong attractions toward each other. And this also could be one that could have something to do with the public eye, because I know that their relationship is now going into the public eye. The other thing that I noticed is that her Saturn, which is in Taurus, it trines with his Neptune, which is in Capricorn. And I also want to say that Burna Boy's Neptune is conjunct to his North Node, which is in Capricorn. So just to go back a little bit, that means in this lifetime, Burna Boy is meant to embrace hard work. He is meant to be someone who has to figure out ways to take responsibility for other people, as well as to grow up. And he has to learn how to essentially run his life like a business. He has to learn how to be more mature, because in previous lifetimes he was not that mature, and he probably relied on other people as well as his feelings for others. And I say that because he does have that Leo stellium in his chart, and now he's supposed to learn how to stand up for himself. And because of Halle's Saturn trining with his Neptune, as well as his North Node, I think that she could help him in terms of really achieving that North Node status. So I thought that that was really cool. And also this Neptune in Capricorn, it could speak to them also having some sort of relationship that could be in the public eye that might be long standing. So maybe they could have like worked on some projects together, or maybe they're going to have a relationship that has a little bit more of a public element to it, or they also could be around each other for a very long time. So I thought that was really cool. The last trine I'm going to talk about is that Halle's Jupiter trines with Burna Boy's Uranus. So that I thought was really cool, because it means then that her work with going towards more, that is also going to help him, as well as she might notice that she has more freedom in terms of the work projects that she might take on. I did remember seeing a tarot reading last month that talked about how Halle would probably get more prominence and work as an actress as opposed to a singer. So I wonder if this could be one aspect in their chart that could possibly lead to that. Now, I want to talk about some of the squares that they have as well, because I didn't want this video to get too long. The first one that I noticed that I'm a little bit nervous about, and that's because it's in both charts, is that They have a Jupiter square Saturn. So Haley's Saturn in Taurus that I said was also trining with his Uranus, it also squares with his Jupiter in Leo. So I talked about before for Haley's portion that Haley could be somebody where she could be very possessive, and it also might end up being an ongoing struggle because of that Saturn in Taurus. And Saturn, because it deals with all 10th house issues, it's going to deal with a delay of sorts. For her to have her Saturn in Taurus and it's squaring with Burna Boy's Jupiter and Leo, I think that I could see this as in maybe like he might view her eventually as a Debbie Downer because she's not necessarily going to want to go out and party with him all the time or have everything be all about me, because that's basically what that Jupiter energy is going to be about. The other thing that I noticed is that their Jupiter square one another. So they might have different approaches as far as how they approach their life philosophy as well as what they want to expand on. And then that may cause some rife when it comes to the relationship. I also do see this as in like another woman could possibly come into the mix. I have seen before that he can be a little bit of a ladies' man, and I do see that aspect playing out in their chart. This could just be something like he ends up saying while he's out and about and he's without her, oh, I want this one and this one and that one. And because of Haley's Mars, she's going to want something more traditional, more conservative. However, because of Burna Boy's Jupiter, I think that he's just going to be a little bit too wild for that. Another aspect that I think is interesting is that her Mars squares his Saturn, which is at that 5th degree of Aquarius. So this just reiterates that she's going to want something more traditional out of life, and he is not going to want to do it. I mean, put it bluntly, I mean, Burna Boy is for the streets. And if we could talk more about this cosmically, we also could say maybe he was meant to be for the streets because of that Capricorn North node. Not to say that all Capricorns are for the streets or anything like that. I mean, Capricorn is also the sign of authority. I say it though like that because typically speaking, all 10th house placements are going to talk about what your public image is. And he is someone who's supposed to focus more on his work life as well as his reputation and his public image. And I think that means that he is not somebody who is meant to be a husband. I don't know if he's ever been married, but I could see him not being married with this aspect in his chart. The other thing that I noticed when it came to them is that I think the last thing I want to talk about is, no, I kind of think that that's kind of like all that I really wanted to say. I could go more into this, but the video is getting kind of long. I just wanted to take a look at their chart and kind of see like what's going on. I could see these two as staying in each other's lives for kind of a long time. I think it might kind of go in and out of, between being public as well as being private. When I look at this aspect, I do see this relationship as being mutually beneficial. In some ways, I think that like he's going to probably break her out of her shell. And from what I've heard, Burna Boy is a bit of a bad boy, quote unquote, a Nigerian bad boy, and have not had the fortune or misfortune to find this out. But apparently African men are very romantic. They're very sensual. And she might be kind of wrapped up in this right now. However, I could say when I'm taking a look at this chart, there will be some expansion here, but I think that there will also be a lot of hardships for her as well as what she's supposed to discover this time. So that now concludes my Synastry reading of Halle Bailey and Burna Boy. Please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one.